Daniel Carter walked through the lower corridors of Meridian 7 with his rifle held low. The station was busy today. Hundreds of species moved through its halls, buying and selling goods from across the galaxy. His job was simple. Walk the corridors. Watch for trouble. Report anything strange. He had served in the Galactic Defense Corps for 8 years now. Most of that time was spent on boring assignments like this one. Guard duty, patrol routes, standing in corners while important people talked about trade agreements. It was not the life he had imagined when he joined, but it kept him busy. It kept him from thinking too much about the past. The lower corridors were darker than the main trading floors. Down here, the lights flickered and the air smelled like old metal. This was where smugglers worked, where criminals made deals away from the eyes of station security. Daniel was not supposed to be down here. His patrol route ended 3 levels above, but he had heard something. A sound that did not belong. A muffled cry, cut short. He followed the sound through a maze of cargo containers and broken machinery. His boots made no noise on the metal floor. 8 years of training had taught him how to move without being heard. He found them in a dead-end corridor near the shuttle base. 3 figures in black masks were dragging an unconscious body toward a hidden door. The body was alien, tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Daniel could see wings folded against its back, delicate and beautiful like stained glass. He did not know what species this was. He did not know if this was a kidnapping or an arrest or something else entirely. But he knew what he saw. 3 armed figures. 1 helpless victim. That was enough. Daniel stepped out of the shadows. He called out for them to stop and drop their weapons. He identified himself as Galactic Defense Corps. The 3 figures turned. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the closest one raised a weapon and fired. Daniel was already moving. He dove behind a cargo container as energy bolts burned the air where he had been standing. He returned fire, his shots quick and precise. The first attacker fell. The second tried to flank him, but Daniel anticipated the move. 2 more shots. Another body on the ground. The third attacker grabbed the unconscious alien and held a blade to its throat. The figure shouted at Daniel to drop his weapon or watch the prisoner die. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly. He took 1 step forward, then another. He kept talking, kept the attacker focused on his words. Then he moved. The blade cut his arm as he knocked it away. The pain was sharp and bright, but he had felt worse. His fist connected with the attacker's face. Then his knee drove into their stomach. The figure crumpled, but managed to scramble away and run through the hidden door. Daniel let them go. He had something more important to deal with. The alien was still unconscious. Daniel checked for injuries and found none. He lifted the body carefully. It was lighter than he expected, almost weightless in his arms. He carried it back through the corridors and up to the station's medical bay. The doctors took the alien immediately. Daniel stood outside, bleeding from his arm, filling out incident reports on his tablet. He described it as a standard assault intervention. 3 attackers. 1 victim of unknown species. Situation resolved. He expected a commendation at most. Maybe a day of rest to let his arm heal. Instead, 4 hours later, a Thraxian warship dropped out of hyperspace with its weapons on and pointed at Meridian-7. Commander Laura Briggs found Daniel in the mess hall. Her face was pale. She sat down across from him and told him that he needed to come with her right now. Daniel asked what was wrong. He asked if this was about the incident in the lower corridors. Briggs told him that the alien he saved was Queen Vera of the Thraxian Dominion. She ruled 12 star systems. She commanded one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. And she had been traveling in secret for negotiations that no one was supposed to know about. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He asked what the Thraxians wanted. Briggs told him they wanted to see the human who touched their sacred monarch. Daniel was escorted to a shuttle under armed guard. He expected to die. The Thraxians were known for their strict customs and their hatred of outsiders. Touching their queen without permission was probably punishable by death in a dozen different ways. The Thraxian ship was massive and beautiful, all curved walls and soft light. Guards with ceremonial spears led Daniel through endless corridors until they reached a chamber filled with advisors and soldiers. At the center, resting on a bed of silver cloth, was the alien he had saved. Queen Vera was awake now. Her compound eyes studied him with an expression he could not read. Her wings caught the light, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. The high priestess beside her spoke first. She demanded to know why a human had dared to lay hands on the sacred queen. Daniel told them the truth. He saw someone in danger. He helped. That was all. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The advisors shouted about punishment and protocol and the insult to Thraxianana. Then Vera raised one hand, and everyone fell silent. She spoke directly to Daniel. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire chamber. She told him that by ancient Thraxian law, a life saved creates a bond. He had protected her when her own guards had failed. Until she released him from this duty, he was her sworn protector. Daniel did not understand. He asked what that meant. Vera looked at him with those strange, beautiful eyes. It meant, she told him, that his fate was now tied to hers. The Thraxian throne world was called Cathvarus. Daniel had never seen anything like it. Crystal towers rose into a purple sky, catching light from 3 distant suns. Forests glowed with soft blue and green colors, alive with creatures that sang in frequencies humans could barely hear. Everything was beautiful. Everything made him feel like he did not belong. He had been on this world for 2 weeks now. The diplomatic agreement had been signed quickly. The Galactic Defense Corps had transferred him to Queen Vera's personal guard without asking his opinion. They called it a cultural exchange. Daniel called it being sold to keep the peace. His quarters were in the palace's outer ring, far from the queen's chambers, but still inside the royal compound. The room was larger than any place he had ever lived, with windows that looked out over the glowing forests. He should have been grateful. Instead, he felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. High Priestess Silthi made sure he knew his place. She appeared on his first morning with a list of rules longer than his arm. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look directly at the queen. Do not touch anything in the sacred chambers. Do not. Daniel listened to all of it. He nodded at the right moments. Then he asked one question. He asked why someone had tried to kidnap the queen. Silthi's compound eyes narrowed. She told him that was not his concern. His only duty was to stand where he was told and look threatening. If he could manage that without embarrassing the Dominion, it would be a miracle. She left him alone after that. Most of the Thraxians did. They looked at him like he was an animal that had wandered into their palace by accident. Some of them did not hide their disgust. Others simply pretended he did not exist. Daniel did not mind. He had been ignored before. He had been hated before. What mattered was the mission. And right now, his mission was to understand what was really happening in this palace. He watched. He listened. He learned. The Thraxians thought humans were stupid because they moved slowly and spoke simply. They did not realize that Daniel understood more of their language than he let on. They did not realize that he was paying attention to every whispered conversation, every nervous glance, every lie that did not quite fit. On his 8th day, he noticed that the guards changed their patrol patterns whenever Prince Keth visited the palace. On his 10th day, he saw one of the queen's advisors pass a message to a servant who worked in the prince's household. On his 12th day, He found a gap in the palace security that any trained soldier would have noticed immediately. The Thraxians had not noticed it, because they could not imagine betrayal from within. Their society was built on loyalty and hierarchy. The idea that someone close to the queen might want her dead was unthinkable. Daniel knew better. He had grown up on Earth, where betrayal was as common as breathing. On his 14th night, he saved the queen's life for the second time. It was during a formal dinner. Daniel stood against the wall, watching the nobles eat and talk and pretend to enjoy each other's company. The queen sat at the head of the table, elegant and distant, touching her food but barely eating. Daniel saw the problem before anyone else. The color of her drink was wrong, just slightly, a shade darker than it should have been. Human eyes could see millions of colors. Thraxian compound eyes could not. He moved without thinking. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps, took the cup from the queen's hand just before it reached her lips, and set it on the table. The room went silent. Every Thraxian stared at him with shock and anger. How dare a human touch the queen's cup? How dare he interrupt a sacred meal? Daniel ignored them. He called for the royal physician. He said the drink had been poisoned. The physician tested it. The room waited. Then the physician's wings trembled, and he announced that the human was right. The drink contained enough venom to kill the queen in minutes. The chaos that followed lasted for hours. Guards searched the palace. Servants were questioned. But the poisoner was never found. Whoever had done this had covered their tracks well. That night, the queen summoned Daniel to her private chambers. He had never been this close to her before. Without the formal robes and the crown, she looked smaller, more real. Her wings were folded against her back, and her compound eyes watched him with something that might have been curiosity. She asked him how he knew. How had he seen what her own guards had missed? Daniel told her the truth. Human eyes work differently. They saw colors that Thraxians could not. It was not skill. It was just biology. Vera was quiet for a long moment. Then she told him something that changed everything. She said that she did not invoke the ancient law by accident. When she woke in the medical bay and learned that a human had saved her, she saw an opportunity. She needed someone with no political ties. Someone who could not be bribed or threatened by her enemies. Someone who saw the world differently than everyone around her. Daniel asked her what enemies she meant. Vera's wings shifted, creating patterns of light and shadow. She told him about her brother, Prince Keth. He wanted her throne. He had wanted it for decades. And now, she believed, he was finally making his move. She told him that her council might already be loyal to Keth. She did not know who to trust. She only knew that the kidnapping, the poisoning, and the gaps in security were not accidents. They were steps in a plan. Daniel asked what she wanted from him. Vera looked at him directly. She said she wanted him to help her survive. Daniel thought about it. He thought about his sister, killed in a raid on a human colony. He thought about the years he had spent fighting and bleeding for people who did not care about him. Then he looked at the alien queen, surrounded by enemies, asking a human for help. He told her he would try. The border worlds between Thraxian space and Varath territory were dangerous places. The two empires had been enemies for centuries, fighting wars that killed billions and destroyed entire star systems. A fragile peace had held for 20 years now, but everyone knew it could break at any moment. Prince Keth had chosen this place for his trap with care. A Varath diplomatic vessel had crossed into contested space and refused to leave. They claimed engine failure. They demanded to speak with the Thraxian queen directly. Any other response, they said, would be considered an act of war. Vera had no choice. If she refused to go, she would look weak. Her enemies in the council would use it against her. If she sent a representative, the Varath would be insulted, and the piece might collapse. She had to go herself. Daniel did not like it. He told her it was a trap. Everything about the situation screamed danger. But Vera already knew that. She was going anyway. They traveled on a small diplomatic ship with only a handful of guards. The Queen could not bring a full military escort without making the Vorath nervous. She could not bring no escort without looking vulnerable. So she brought a small team and hoped it would be enough. Daniel stood beside her during the journey. They talked more than they ever had before. Not about politics or conspiracy, but about smaller things. Personal things. Vera told him about her childhood. How she'd been raised from birth to rule. How she had never been allowed to show weakness or fear. How she had never had a real friend because everyone around her wanted something. Daniel told her about his sister. Her name was Lily. She had been 16 when the raiders came to their colony. Daniel had been off-world, serving his first tour with the Defense Corps. By the time he got home, there was nothing left but ashes and memories. Vera's wings shifted with colors. Daniel was learning to read. Sadness. Understanding. She told him she was sorry. Daniel said he had spent years being angry. Angry at the raiders. Angry at the military for not protecting the colony. Angry at himself for not being there. Eventually, he realized that anger was not bringing Lily back. So he stopped being angry and started being useful. Vera was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said something that surprised him. She said that she envied him. He had been allowed to grieve. He had been allowed to feel his loss and move past it. Queens were not given that luxury. Queens had to be strong even when they were breaking inside. Daniel looked at her. He told her that strength was not about hiding pain. It was about surviving it. The diplomatic meeting took place on a neutral station in the contested zone. The Vorath delegation was larger than expected. Their leader, a massive creature with scales like black iron, made formal apologies for the inconvenience and promised to resolve the engine problems quickly. Daniel watched everything. He counted guards. He noted exits. He saw the way the Vorath soldiers moved, always keeping the Queen between them and the doors. When the attack came, he was already moving. Energy bolts filled the air. The Vorath leader shouted orders in a language Daniel did not speak, but the meaning was clear. Kill the Queen. Leave no witnesses. But the weapons they used were Thyraxian. The tactics they employed were Thoraxian. This was not a Vorath assassination. This was Prince Keth's work, using old enemies to hide his involvement. Daniel grabbed the Queen and pulled her behind an overturned table. 3 of their guards were already dead. The other 2 were fighting, but they would not last long. The Vorath assassins were too many and too well armed. Daniel made a decision. He told Vera to stay low. Then he stood up and charged. The Vorath expected Thoraxians. Fragile, elegant, easy to kill. They did not expect a human. Daniel took a bolt to the shoulder and kept coming. He broke the first assassin's neck with his hands. He took a blade from the falling body and buried it in the second attacker. A third shot hit him in the side, burning through his armor, but he refused to fall. The Vorath hesitated. They had never seen anything like this. A creature that should be dead kept fighting, kept killing, kept coming. Daniel used that hesitation. He grabbed Vera and ran. Behind them, the remaining guards sacrificed themselves to buy time. They escaped through maintenance corridors and emergency airlocks. They stole a small shuttle and fled into the asteroid field that surrounded the station. Navarra's ships tried to follow, but the field was too dense. Only a pilot with human reflexes could navigate it at speed. For 3 days, they hid in that asteroid field. Daniel's wounds were bad. The bolts had burned through muscle and bone. He should have been unconscious. He should have been dead, but Vera needed him. So he stayed awake. He found them shelter in a hollowed asteroid. He found water in the ice that covered its surface. He found food in the emergency supplies of their stolen shuttle. Human survival instincts, honed by millennia on a harsh and dangerous world, did what Thyraxian training could not. On the third day, a Thyraxian rescue fleet found them. When the soldiers entered their shelter, they found their queen alive and whole. They found her human guardian standing between her and the door, barely conscious, a makeshift weapon in his hand, still ready to fight. The story spread through the fleet within hours. The human who would not die. The human who carried the queen through enemy territory. The human who refused to stop protecting her even when his body was failing. Some Thyraxians called it barbaric. Others called it something else. They called it loyalty. Daniel spent 2 weeks in the royal healing chambers. The Thyraxian doctors had never treated a human before. They did not understand his biology, his pain tolerance, or his stubborn refusal to stay in bed. But they learned quickly. Humans, they discovered, healed faster than expected if given the right care. By the time Daniel was allowed to leave the healing chambers, everything had changed. Prince Keth had used the queen's absence to spread poison through the court. Not the kind that went in drinks, but the kind that went in ears. He told the nobles that Vera had been corrupted by the human. He said that her judgment was compromised. He claimed that she was no longer fit to rule. Daniel heard the whispers as he walked through the palace. Some Thyraxians looked at him with new respect. Others looked at him with fear and hatred. The ones who supported Keth saw him as proof that their queen had lost her way. The ones who supported Vera saw him as a symbol of her strength. Either way, he was at the center of a storm he did not understand. The Festival of Eternal Wings was the most sacred celebration in Thyraxian culture. It honored the first queen who had united the Thyraxian people under one rule. For 3 days, the entire dominion stopped to pray, feast, and renew their loyalty to the crown. This year, the festival would also be a battleground. The High Council summoned Vera on the first day of the celebration. They demanded that she execute the human to prove her loyalty to Thyraxian purity. They said his presence in the palace was an insult to their ancestors. They said his influence over the queen was destroying their traditions. Vera stood before the council alone. Her wings were spread wide, displaying colors of authority and defiance. She told them that Daniel Carter had saved her life twice. She told them that he had shown more loyalty than most of her own nobles. She would not kill him to satisfy their fear. The council erupted in argument. Some supported the queen. Others demanded her removal. Prince Keth sat in his chair and smiled, watching his plans unfold. Daniel watched from the shadows of the chamber. He had not been invited to this meeting, but no one had been able to stop him from coming. He saw the way the council was divided. He counted the nobles on each side. Vera was losing. That night, he went to her chambers. He told her that he would leave. His presence was causing her more problems than it solved. If he went back to human space, maybe the council would calm down. Maybe she could survive this. Vera looked at him for a long moment. Her wings shifted through colors he could not name. She told him no. She said that giving in to this demand would not stop Keth. It would only show him that she could be pressured into abandoning those who served her. If she threw Daniel away to save herself, she would deserve to lose her throne. The next day, she made her answer public. She declared Daniel Carter a hero of the Dominion. She granted him the same legal protections as any Thyraxian citizen. Anyone who harmed him would face royal justice. The announcement forced her enemies into a corner. They could accept her decision and wait for another opportunity. Or they could act now. Keth chose to act. On the final night of the festival, his soldiers moved through the capital like shadows. They seized the communication towers, the guard stations, and the palace gates. By the time the sun set, half the city was under his control. Keth appeared on every screen in the Dominion. He announced that Queen Vera had been deposed for the good of the species. He said that her corruption by alien influence made her unfit to rule. He promised a new era of purity and strength under his leadership. Daniel was in the outer palace when the coup began. He heard the gunfire and the screams. He saw the soldiers in Keth's colors cutting down anyone who resisted. He ran toward the queen. The fighting was brutal. Daniel had only a sidearm and a knife, taken from a fallen guard. Keth's soldiers had armor and energy weapons. But Daniel had something they did not expect. He had the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. He killed 4 soldiers in the first corridor, 3 more in the second. His wounds reopened. Blood soaked through his clothes. He did not slow down. He found allies along the way. Guards who were still loyal. Servants who refused to bow to a tyrant. They formed a small group that fought toward the Temple of Ancestors. Where Vera had been cornered by Keth's forces, they broke through the temple doors, just as Keth was making his final offer. The prince stood before his sister with a dozen soldiers at his back. His wings displayed victory colors. He told Vera that she could abdicate peacefully and live in exile. Or she could die here and be remembered as a traitor who loved a human more than her own people. Vera said nothing. Her wings were still. Her eyes were fixed on her brother with an emotion that Daniel could not read. Daniel stepped forward. Every weapon in the room turned toward him. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. He invoked the ancient law of sworn protection. He demanded the right of single combat against anyone who threatened his charge. Keth laughed. He asked if the human truly thought he could fight a Thyraxian prince. Daniel said he was willing to find out. Keth's advisors whispered warnings. This was a trap. The human had some plan. But Keth's pride was greater than his caution. He had spent decades believing himself superior to every other being in the galaxy. The idea of losing to a human was unthinkable. He accepted the challenge. The duel would take place at dawn. The Temple of Ancestors was the oldest building on Kethvaros. Its walls had stood for 10,000 years, watching generations of Thyraxians live and die. Now it would watch a human fight for an alien queen. The duel was broadcast across the entire Dominion. Billions of Thyraxians watched as Daniel Carter stepped onto the sacred fighting ground. He wore no armor. He carried only the ceremonial blades that tradition demanded. Across from him, Prince Keth looked like a god of war, his wings spread wide, his body covered in ancient battle dress. The rules were simple. Fight until one warrior could not continue. No interference from others. No weapons beyond the blades already chosen. Daniel studied his opponent. Keth was taller, faster, and stronger. His arms had reach that Daniel could not match. His compound eyes could track movement in ways human vision could not. By every measure, the prince should win easily, but Daniel had spent his life fighting enemies who should have won. The signal came. Keth attacked. The prince moved like lightning. His blades cut through the air faster than human eyes could follow. Daniel barely blocked the first strike. The second caught his arm, drawing blood. The third would have opened his throat if he had not thrown himself backward. Keth laughed. He told Daniel that he had expected more from the human who killed so many of his soldiers. This was disappointing. Daniel said nothing. He was learning. The prince attacked again. Faster this time. More confident. But Daniel was watching the patterns. Keth had trained his whole life in Thyraxian combat forms. Every move was perfect. Every strike followed the ones before it in sequences that had been practiced for generations. That was his weakness. Daniel had no formal training. He fought like a human. Dirty, desperate, unpredictable. The next exchange went differently. When Keth struck, Daniel did not try to block. He stepped into the blow, taking a shallow cut across his chest to get inside the prince's guard. His elbow caught Keth's jaw. His knee drove into the prince's stomach. Keth stumbled back, his compound eyes wide with shock. No one had ever gotten that close to him in combat. The watching Thyraxians murmured in surprise. The human was not dying as quickly as expected. Daniel pressed his advantage. He attacked in ways that Thyraxian combat did not prepare for. He used his head, his elbows, his knees. He grabbed and threw. He bit when he had to. He fought like an animal, because that was what humans were. Survivors from a death world where only the most vicious creatures lived. But Keth was still faster, still stronger. The wounds on Daniel's body multiplied. His arm bled. His chest bled. A strike across his leg made him stagger. The prince was killing him slowly. Piece by piece. In the watching crowd, Vera stood perfectly still. Her wings showed no color at all. Her compound eyes never left the fighting ground. Daniel fell to one knee. His blades felt heavy in his hands. Blood dripped onto the ancient stone floor. He could hear his own heartbeat, slow and steady despite everything. Keth stood over him. The prince was wounded too, but not badly. He could finish this any time he wanted. He was simply enjoying the moment. Keth told Daniel that he had fought well for a primitive species. He said that history would remember this day as proof that humans were no match for Thyraxian superiority. Then he raised his blade for the killing strike. Daniel looked up at him and smiled. Keth hesitated. That smile was wrong. A dying warrior should not smile like that. Daniel moved. He did not try to block the killing blow. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he threw himself forward, directly into the strike. Keth's blade pierced his shoulder, driving through muscle and scraping bone. The pain was beyond anything Daniel had ever felt, but the blade was stuck. And Keth's arms were extended. Daniel's own blade found the prince's throat. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Keth's eyes were wide with disbelief. His wings trembled, showing colors of fear for the first time. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. Daniel twisted the blade. The prince fell. The Temple of Ancestors went silent. Billions of Thyraxians watched as Prince Keth died on the sacred ground, killed by a human who was still standing with a blade in his shoulder. Then Daniel's legs gave out, and he collapsed beside his enemy. Vera ran to him. She had never run anywhere in her life. Queens did not run, but she ran now, falling to her knees beside the wounded human, calling for healers, demanding that they save him. Daniel looked up at her. His vision was fading. He told her that he hoped this was enough. He hoped she was safe now. Vera's wings finally showed color. More colors than Daniel had ever seen, shifting and mixing in patterns that meant everything and nothing. She told him to stop talking. She told him that he was going to live because she commanded it. Daniel tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. He told her that he did not think her commands worked on blood loss. The healers arrived. They took Daniel away. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Vera's face, her compound eyes reflecting the light of 3 suns. He woke 4 days later. The coup had collapsed. Without Keth to lead them, his supporters had surrendered or fled. The council had renewed their loyalty to Queen Vera. The Dominion was at peace. Vera visited him in the healing chamber. She looked different now, stronger, more certain. The conspiracy had nearly destroyed her, but she had survived it, and the surviving had made her harder. She told Daniel that his duty was complete. The life debt had been paid many times over. He was free to return to human space if he wished. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the defense corps, about a life where no one really knew him or cared if he lived or died. Then he thought about this strange world with its crystal towers and glowing forests, about a queen who had seen something in him that no one else had seen. He told her that he would like to stay. Vera's wings showed colors that Daniel was finally learning to read. Relief, joy, something deeper that neither of them had words for yet. She told him that she had hoped he would say that. 1 month later, Daniel stood beside Vera's throne during her coronation renewal ceremony. He wore the formal dress of a royal advisor, modified for human proportions. The Thraxian nobles watched him with a mixture of respect and unease. Vera spoke to the crowd about new beginnings and unexpected alliances, about strength found in strange places, about the future of the Dominion. When the ceremony ended, she turned to Daniel. Her voice was quiet, meant only for him. She told him that she had made many calculated decisions in her life, but keeping him was not one of them. That choice had come from somewhere else. Daniel smiled. He told her that was the most human thing she had ever said. Vera's wings shimmered with colors that meant laughter. Together, they watched the 3 suns set over Kethvaros. A human and a queen, bound by accident, united by choice. And neither of them would have it any other way.